Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. Back from the dead. The airport terminal was too quiet for a homecoming. No banner. No family. No familiar faces. Thorne Mercer stepped onto American soil for the first time in 3 years, alive, but not the same. War had stolen enough from him. His leg bore shrapnel scars, his chest held a rebuilt lung, and his eyes, they didn't blink the way they used to. A cab dropped him outside the address he'd memorized in combat, 318 Dunlow Ridge. But something was wrong. The mailbox didn't have his name on it. The porch swing was gone. A luxury SUV sat in the driveway, and the wind didn't carry the scent of Rena's baking, just fresh paint and foreign perfume. He rang the bell once. A boy answered. Maybe 8. Eyes wide. Hey, is Rena here? The boy blinked. Mom? She's not home. But my dad's inside. Thorne's lips tightened. Her what? Footsteps approached. A man opened the door, shirt unbuttoned, glass of bourbon in hand. Brock Halden, old rival, real estate parasite, smiling like the king of the hill. Well, *T, Brock said. Guess the dead do walk. Thorne didn't move, didn't speak. The rage boiled quietly. Brock smirked. Guess she didn't tell you. Welcome home, soldier. The door slammed in his face. Thorne stood frozen, fist clenched so tight his knuckles cracked. What the hell had happened while he was gone? Thorne didn't go to the police. Didn't call Rena. Didn't sleep. He walked to the only bar still open past midnight, the Rusted Rail. Same sticky floors. Same half-lit jukebox. But now, strangers sat in his booth. He ordered a whiskey. No ice. You looking for someone? The bartender asked. Rena Mercer, Thorne said without flinching. The bartender's brows lifted. Thought she moved out months ago. Married that Brock fella, right? Yeah, Thorne said quietly. Looks that way. A barfly leaned in, slurring. Heard she got a big payout when you died. House sold fast. She cried a lot, then bought a Mercedes. The whiskey burned. Not enough. Thorne left before he did something reckless. He wandered aimlessly until dawn lit the town's forgotten corners. The old hardware store, the tree where Lane broke her arm. Memories flashed like war-zone strobe lights, disjointed, sharp, cruel. A quiet voice broke the fog. Dad? Thorne turned. Lane stood there, 16 now, taller, sharper, her eyes uncertain. He didn't speak. She swallowed hard. I didn't think they were telling the truth. That you were really gone. Where's your mom? Her voice cracked. Gone to Charlotte. Some real estate thing with Brock. Thorne stepped closer. Tell me everything, Lane. Don't leave anything out. Her hands trembled. She reached into her backpack and handed him something. A black flash drive. I've been watching them, she whispered. It's all on here. Thorne stared at her. For the first time, his hands didn't shake from war. They shook from something colder. What the hell was on that drive? Thorne waited until he was alone in the motel room. Curtains drawn. Door locked. TV on static to mask the silence. He plugged in the flash drive. Folders appeared. Voice notes, cam clips, transactions, property docs. First video, Rena laughing in bed. Brock's voice off camera. He's probably bones in a ditch by now. Ain't that right, baby? Rena, it worked, didn't it? Thorne's jaw clenched, chest rising slow but hard. Second file, a PDF of Thorne's death certificate. Forged. Signed by a doctor he'd never met. Next, bank statements. Rena had emptied his disability account 6 weeks after the report of his death. Transfers to offshore accounts, luxury purchases. A wire to someone labeled J. Thornwell, a judge. He clicked on a map. GPS logs. His property, sold, flipped, and cleared for luxury development. Halden Estates. The last file was audio. Rena's voice again, this time cold. If he ever does crawl back, we'll say he's unstable. PTSD. Nobody will believe him. Hell, we could Baker Act him. Thorne closed the laptop slowly. No words. Just silence thick with fury. Outside, church bells rang. Sunday morning. He stepped out into the daylight like a man walking off the battlefield again, except this time, the war was at home. His wife hadn't just betrayed him. She'd buried him alive. The motel walls felt thinner that morning, like secrets were bleeding through the cracks. Thorne stood in front of the mirror, face blank, hands wrapped tight around the edge of the sink. The faucet dripped, drip, 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 like a ticking clock. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her laughing in that video, naked in a bed he once called home. He turned on the shower but didn't step in. Instead, he dressed in silence. Jeans, dark hoodie, military boots still scuffed from sand. He didn't look like a soldier. He looked like a man with nothing left to lose. By 8 a.m., he was sitting across from Lane at a diner off County Line Road. She stirred her hot chocolate but didn't drink it. "You okay?" she asked. Thorne looked out the window. "I'm not sure what that word means anymore." Lane hesitated. "You saw it all?" He nodded once. "They're not just sleeping together," she said. "They're building something." Thorne's gaze narrowed. "Explain." Lane reached into her backpack, pulled out a wrinkled blueprint. "They're developing everything, our land, the pond, the woods behind Nanas. Brock's calling it Halden Heights. It's going to be condos and shopping centers." He stared at the paper. That land had been passed down 3 generations. His father built their home with his own hands. His mother planted every dogwood tree along the driveway. "They used my death to fast-track permits," Lane continued. "I heard them talking to a judge on speaker once. Said something about pushing the zoning board, with a little extra motivation." He didn't blink. "You recorded?" She nodded. "Audio's on the flash drive. Folder marked voice notes/legal. Thorne exhaled slowly, lips tightening. "How long have you been doing this?" Lane looked down. "Since the day after your funeral." He blinked. "You went to that?" She looked away. "I had to. Everyone else said goodbye. I needed to make sure I wasn't crazy for thinking it felt wrong." His throat tightened. This girl, his little girl, had fought harder for him than the woman he married. "You did good, Lane." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "What do we do now?" He looked down at the blueprint, then back out the window as Brock's billboard came into view. "Live Bold. Live Halden. Now," Thorne said quietly. Now, we watched them choke on their own lies. By noon, Thorne had secured a storage unit on the edge of town, a dark, windowless box that would serve as headquarters. No tech trails. No eyes. Just a metal room, a folding table, and war-grade patience. He set up Lane's old laptop, connected a burner drive, and started organizing everything: videos, recordings, contracts, texts. He created a digital trail, carefully backing up every file onto multiple hidden drives. Every soundbite was a dagger, every document a bullet. In one clip, Rena whispered to someone named Judge Thornwell, "Push it through. He's dead." There's no one left to object. Another showed Brock laughing at a meeting with 2 men in suits. "Mercer's land was gold. Poor bastard did half the work for us. He just had to die for it." But Thorne wasn't dead. He was listening. Each file revealed new layers. Rena wasn't just cheating, she was helping launder money through a shell company tied to a corrupt development fund. Federal benefits, veteran grants, real estate loopholes. This wasn't infidelity. This was organized theft. Later that evening, Lane arrived with a brown paper bag of burgers and fries. She stepped inside, looked around. "This place feels like a bunker." "It is," he said, taking the bag. "When we're going to win this war from." She set down a new phone. "Got it from a friend. Burner, no trace." He nodded. "Smart." She sat, watching her father work like a man rebuilding a battlefield. "You're not going to kill them, right?" she asked, voice soft. Thorne looked up, eyes dark but steady. "No, I'm going to do something worse." "Like what?" He cracked a small, cold smile. "I'm going to let them keep thinking they've won." 2 days later, Thorne stood across the street from his old home, watching men in hard hats tear down what was once his porch. Brock had turned it into a construction site. Signs were staked across the front: "Coming soon, Halden Heights. Luxury starts here." An SUV pulled in. Rena stepped out, heels, sunglasses, Bluetooth headset. She laughed at something on her phone, waved at the crew, then disappeared into the house like she never belonged to anyone but herself. Thorne gritted his teeth and walked away. He didn't go far. Just to the county records office downtown. The building smelled like toner and old carpet. A young clerk met him at the counter. "Need help with something?" "Yeah," Thorne said, setting down a paper. "This land deed. Need to know who filed the transfer and how." The clerk typed a few things. "Looks like the transfer was approved under emergency status due to presumed death of owner. Probate was waived. Can I see who signed that?" The clerk turned the screen. Probate judge was Thornwell. Property assessor was Halden's firm. Thorne smiled, but there was no warmth. Next stop was the assessor's office. He posed as an interested investor, wore a blazer Lane bought from Goodwill, and carried a briefcase stuffed with nothing but his discharge papers. The front desk receptionist said, "Mr. Halden's out for the day." "That's fine," Thorne replied. "Just wanted to see the blueprints for the development. I hear it's a veteran-supported housing zone." She handed him a glossy packet. Inside were mock-ups of luxury condos, yoga studios, and a gated dog park. Nothing for veterans. Nothing that helped anyone but Brock and Rena. Thorne tucked the packet under his arm. They used his name, his history, his sacrifice. They made a fortune off his grave. The deeper Thorne dug, the dirtier the trail became. By the end of the week, he had compiled a list: names, dates, signatures. Some he recognized: real estate partners, county officials. Others were new: silent investors, trust managers, and a shell company listed under the name Valor Heritage Development, LLC. But there was one document that turned his blood to ice. It was a transfer form filed weeks before his reported death. A pre-approval waiver for full ownership of his land, granted to Rena Mercer on grounds of domestic hardship. Attached was a fake letter, forged under Thorne's name, stating that he intended to transfer his assets to ensure the well-being of my wife and daughter should anything happen to me. He'd never written that letter. She'd planned a handover before his deployment ended. "Jesus," he muttered, dropping the paper onto the storage unit table. Lane watched from the corner, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She wanted it all, Thorne said. Not just to move on. Not just Brock. She wanted the land. The money. Everything. Lane nodded. She always said this place held her back. That she could have had a bigger life. Thorne looked at his daughter. "She used you." "I know," Lane said. "She played it like we were starting fresh. I didn't know she faked paperwork. I thought she just gave up on you. Not killed you on paper." He walked over, put a hand on her shoulder. "You believed in me. That's more than most." Lane's voice was cold now. "So what do we do with this?" "We trace the money, follow the files, and then we blow it up." "How?" Thorne's jaw tightened. "We're going to break the whole damn operation. But first, we need to find the one thing they think they buried deep." Lane tilted her head. "What's that?" He looked her dead in the eyes. "A witness." Thorne drove 2 hours east to a rundown trailer park just outside Durham. The man he was looking for didn't appear in public records, but his name showed up in the metadata of a scanned invoice. Thomas R. Culver. Culver was a notary, the one who'd witnessed Thorne's death affidavit. Only Thorne had never met him. He knocked on a faded aluminum door, waited. Nothing. He knocked again, harder this time. The door cracked open an inch. A balding man peeked through. "Who are you?" "Someone who's supposed to be dead," Thorne said flatly. The man froze, then shut the door, clicked the lock. Thorne stepped back, speaking loud enough for Culver to hear. "I know you notarized a document claiming I was Kia. I know you signed a lie. I also know that kind of forgery carries prison time." The silence stretched. Then, the door creaked open again. Inside, Culver sat at a cluttered table, chain-smoking, jittery hands shaking worse than Thorne's. I was paid. That's all. Said it was routine. A military form." "Who paid you?" Thorne asked. "Some guy in a suit. Said he was legal counsel for Halden Developments. Showed me Rena's ID. Said she needed to transfer the estate fast before the will closed." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Did you ever confirm the death?" "No. I just signed what they gave me." Do you still have the originals? Culver looked terrified. No, but I took photos. For my own protection. Thorne leaned in. You're going to send me everything. And you're going to testify when the time comes. Culver paled. Testify. If you don't, you're going down with them. The man exhaled. You're not dead, are you? Thorne smiled without warmth. Not yet. But they will be. Back in his unit, Thorne stared at a name he hadn't spoken aloud in years. Derek Knowles. His old army buddy. The only person he confided in before that final mission. A man who sat beside him in the Humvee and watched his 6 for 5 deployments. Derek was also the man who signed off on the injury report that listed Thorne as critically wounded, non-recoverable. Thorne found his address through an old contact in the VA system. It was a modest home outside Raleigh, with a new Ford parked in the driveway and kids' bikes strewn across the front lawn. He knocked. Derek answered, froze mid-breath. Thorne. Surprised? Thorne asked. I thought you were dead. You signed the report, Thorne said. Why? Derek stepped outside, closing the door behind him. You were bleeding out. The CO said you weren't going to make it. I followed orders. And then, he told me not to file the medevac request. Said the paperwork was being handled. I figured you were gone. Then I saw Rena at the memorial. She looked fine. Too fine. You never followed up? I tried. Got stonewalled. Transferred to desk duty. Figured something wasn't right. But I didn't have proof. Thorne stepped closer. You have a chance to make it right now. Derek met his eyes. What do you need? Testimony. Records. Anything you saved. I'm building a case. Derek hesitated, then nodded. All right. Let's burn the bastards down. As Thorne drove away, Lane's message popped up on the burner phone. I found something. You're going to want to see this. It's not just your land. They're doing it to other vets too. Thorne's hands tightened on the wheel. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was war. The storm had a face now. It wasn't just Rena, or Brock, or even the crooked judge who sold Thorne's death like it was a signature on a damn receipt. No, the real monster was hiding behind the curtains. A man with stars on his chest and rot in his veins. Colonel Matthew Rourke, Thorne's former commanding officer. The man who ordered the final mission. The man who declared him dead. And now, the man Lane discovered was connected to every property deal Rena and Brock had made in the last year. He wasn't in the paperwork, but his wife was. His brother-in-law. His personal charity for wounded vets that received over $2 million in funding, half of which disappeared into LLCs tied to Halden Development. Thorne sat in the back of the storage unit with Derek and Lane, laying out the names on a whiteboard. This is organized fraud, Derek muttered. They built a pipeline using your death as the demo model. Thorne nodded. And they're doing it to others. Lane pointed to a list. I found 5 other families. All vets. All declared dead under probable Kia status. Every single one had land seized or transferred under emergency conditions. Thorne's fingers tapped the table, slow and steady. They used the uniform, he said. Used the system. Wrote us off like bad debt. Derek's jaw clenched. We expose this. It won't just bring them down. It'll rip half this county in half. Thorne looked at both of them. Good. He leaned forward, voice sharp. We don't just want revenge anymore. We want justice. And that means we make the system choke on its own dirt. Lane glanced at him. What do we do first? Thorne grabbed a folder labeled Gala. We crashed their celebration. Welcome, everyone, to Halden Heights. Applause filled the unfinished banquet hall. Strings of lights hung overhead like stars faking their shine. Polished investors, local politicians, and media circled wine tables while Brock Halden stood center stage, microphone in one hand, champagne flute in the other. Rena stood beside him in a red dress Thorne had bought her 5 anniversaries ago. She didn't even blink. This project, Brock beamed, represents the new American dream. A place where tradition meets innovation. Where legacy becomes luxury. The crowd clapped like trained seals. But Thorne was already inside. He moved like a shadow through the back hallway, dressed in black, credentials forged by Lane's friend at the local print shop. He wore a vendor badge, carried a box of media equipment, and kept his head down. Derek stood at the exit in a valet jacket, nodding to Thorne once as he passed. Everything was in place. Upstairs, Lane sat in the audio booth, pretending to control the music but really streaming everything to an encrypted cloud. Cameras were planted. Microphones hidden in flower vases, napkin dispensers, speaker podiums. Every whisper was recorded. Every dirty backpat. Every, "We'll get you your cut." And just past 8 p.m., Thorne saw him. Colonel Rourke. Grayer now, but still smug. Laughing with the mayor, drinking the blood money champagne like nothing mattered. Thorne stared. His chest didn't rise. His hands didn't shake. His eyes didn't flinch. It wasn't time to strike yet. It was time to listen. Let them enjoy the illusion. Because the higher they climbed, the harder they'd fall. The next morning, Thorne was already at the courthouse steps before the doors opened. He didn't go to the front desk. He went to the clerk's records room. A bribe? Not needed. He had Lane with him. She smiled at the young clerk, explained she was working on a school report about local housing developments, and Thorne stood quietly behind her with a thumb drive, a forged release form, and the name of a judge Thornwell typed cleanly in the request. 20 minutes later, they had everything. Title transfers, hearing dockets, emergency land seizure filings. Thorne laid them out back at the unit, one by one. "Look here," he said, pointing to a pattern. "Same week as my death? 2 other vets in the county, both had land transferred. One in Black Hollow, one outside Gibsonville." Derek frowned. "Pattern's too clean to be accidental." "It's not," Thorne said. "It's a machine. A system built to feed itself." They discovered emails between Halden's company and county appraisers, suggesting under-the-table bonuses for streamlined processing. They found digital payment trails from Valor Heritage Development to Rourke's veteran charity. They uncovered Rena's email to Brock. "He'll never come back. He's buried. We can finally build the life we wanted." Lane stared at that line the longest. "She chose money," she whispered. "Over you. Over me." Thorne nodded once. "Then we take her crown, and his kingdom, and their whole empire." Derek tapped the screen. "When?" Thorne checked his watch. 3 days. That's when the city council votes on the final permits. We exposed them before that. We ruined them at the peak. "And after?" Derek asked. Thorne's face didn't change. "After, we make damn sure no one ever uses a soldier's grave again." It was always the paperwork. Greed made people sloppy. And when money changed hands faster than people could count it, mistakes happened. Thorne knew this. He was counting on it. His next target wasn't a politician or soldier. It was a numbers guy, a mid-level accountant named Jared Fisk, whose signature was stamped on 5 separate property deals tied to Valor Heritage Development. A man who once worked for Halden's firm and now conveniently ran a private compliance consultancy. Lane tracked him to a coffee shop off I-40. He came every Wednesday, always sat by the window, always ordered the same thing, double espresso, no sugar. Thorne walked in, sat across from him without asking. Jared blinked. "Can I help you?" "You already did." Thorne dropped a folder on the table. Inside, copies of the forged VA benefit transfers, bank logs, a photo of Jared at the gala. "You know what this is?" Thorne asked. Jared's throat bobbed. "No idea what you're talking about." Thorne leaned in. Calm. Cold. "Your signatures on documents that helped steal land from disabled veterans. One of those veterans was me. You're Thorne Mercer. Surprised I'm not 6 feet under?" Jared shifted in his seat, sweat gathering at his hairline. "Look, man, I just moved numbers. I didn't know, spare it." Thorne pulled out a flash drive. "On here is everything you gave them. You've got 2 options. Talk to me, or I go straight to the DA with a complete fraud package and let you be the face of it." Jared swallowed hard. "I want emails, names, schedules, all of it." He nodded. "Okay, but I want protection." Thorne stood. "You'll get it, if you move fast." Clock's ticking. Chapter 14. Collateral damage. Thorne never wanted to be a hero, but what he read next made his hands shake. Jared had delivered. Emails, contracts, even burner phone screenshots. But what hit hardest was a spreadsheet, names of veterans marked as targets. One name stood out: Staff Sergeant Leo Mendez. Thorne remembered him. Same deployment. They shared a foxhole in Kandahar. Leo had lost a leg, retired to a quiet farm outside town. According to the spreadsheet, that farm had been seized for unpaid property taxes. A lie. The files showed the taxes were paid early, but the records were edited just before seizure papers were filed. Thorne drove to the edge of Moore County. Dirt roads, dust in the air. He found Leo living in a rusted trailer on a plot next to a construction site. "What happened to your house?" Thorne asked. Leo recognized him instantly. "Mercer. Man, I thought you were dead." "Not yet." Leo's smile faded. "Bank took the farm. Said I missed 2 quarters. I didn't. Showed them receipts. They didn't care. Said a judge approved it." Thorne nodded. "Judge Thornwell." Leo blinked. "How'd you know?" "Because it wasn't just you. They're using vets. Our names. Our records. Our trauma." Leo shook his head. "Goddamn vultures." Thorne pulled out a folder. "I'm building something. I want your statement. And if you've got any old paperwork, even better." Leo stepped inside the trailer, came back with a battered file box. "You want justice, Mercer?" "I want to bury them. Every last one." Leo smirked. "Let's dig." Chapter 15. The DA's poker game. District Attorney Maureen Keller wasn't the kind to scare easy. She dealt with cartels, mayors, even a serial killer once. She kept her cards close, and her pistol closer. So when Thorne walked into her office with a steel jaw and a folder of criminal conspiracy documents, she didn't flinch. But she didn't smile either. "Mercer," she said, scanning the name on the manila file. "You're supposed to be dead." "Not my fault," he replied. "But I can prove who I am. And I've got evidence that'll make your next 5 cases irrelevant compared to this one." She opened the folder. Land theft, fraud, federal benefit laundering, judges involved, developers, officers. "You're claiming half the county's leadership is in on this?" "No," Thorne said. "I'm proving it." Keller sat back in her chair. "Why me?" "Because I did my homework. You're clean, and you hate dirty uniforms." She narrowed her eyes. "Flattery won't keep you out of jail if this is fake." He pulled out a flash drive. "Start with the voice notes. Go to the Halden Gala files. Cross-reference bank accounts with these LLCs. By the end of tonight, you'll have enough to make headlines." Keller leaned forward. "You want headlines?" Thorne's face didn't move. "I want blood. Legal blood." She studied him. "If I go after this, I'll have to do it loud. Public. Political suicide. Then make it loud enough they can't bury it." She was silent for a moment, then nodded once. "You've got 72 hours. Bring me something bulletproof, or I bury it myself." Thorne stood. "You'll have it. And when this is over," he looked her in the eye, "you'll wish I had stayed dead. We just hit 3,000 subscribers. Thanks to you. Every subscription counts, so if you enjoy the content, hit subscribe and join our growing family. Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from? Comment below. Quick check. Loving the video but haven't subscribed yet? Most viewers haven't. Crazy, right? Now, back to the story. Lane sat in the car outside her mom's condo, fingers trembling on the wheel. She hadn't been inside in weeks. Rena had stopped texting, stopped asking where she was. Brock called once. Left a message that sounded more like a warning than a check-in. "You're being ungrateful, Lane. You don't understand what we've built." But she did, and she was about to walk straight into it. She clipped the wire mic to the inside of her sweater, tested the audio feed to her phone, and took a breath that felt heavier than her own lungs. When she knocked, Rena answered in a silk robe, coffee in hand, fake smile glued in place. "Well, look who finally remembered she has a mother." Lane stepped in without hugging her. "Just needed to talk." Rena closed the door, her heels clicking sharp against marble floors. "About. I don't know where I fit anymore. With Dad gone. With Brock." She looked around. "Everything's changed." Rena softened, or pretended to. "Sweetheart, this is for the best. He wouldn't have been happy here. He wasn't the same anymore." "You knew he was alive," Lane said, her voice barely above a whisper. Rena's smile twitched. What are you talking about? I heard you, Lane said. Months ago. You said he might come back. And that if he did, you'd make him disappear again. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Rena laughed. Baby, people say things they don't mean when they're scared. You weren't scared, Lane said. You were excited. Click. The wire was still hot, and Rena had just confessed. Lane stood. Thanks for the talk. Rena grabbed her wrist. You listen to me, but Lane yanked free. No. You listen. He's coming, and you won't see him until it's too late. They moved in total silence. Thorne, Derek, Lane, and Jared met at a locked facility outside town, an old telecom warehouse Derek's cousin owned. No eyes, no Wi-Fi, just power, steel, and concrete. A war room in the modern age. On the table were 10 burner phones, 2 laptops, color-coded case files, and an entire section of the whiteboard labeled leverage. Everything's synced, Lane said, pointing to a laptop. Each mic, each camera, feeds into the cloud and backs up twice. One in Utah, one in Germany. Thor nodded. If they shut us down, we still burn them. Jared pulled up a calendar. Council vote is in 48 hours. That's when the permits go live and they break ground on 5 more veteran-owned lands. We stopped that vote, Thorne said. How? Derek asked. We don't stop the vote. We stop the people behind it. He pointed to names. Judge Thornwell, Councilman Ernie Griggs, Colonel Rourke. These 3 are going to get a visit. Not a threat, not a weapon, just truth. Derek raised an eyebrow. Truth doesn't scare guys like that. It does when it's on camera, Thorne said, and tied to federal crimes. Lane slid a flash drive across the table. Here's the edited files. Everything we've caught on audio, time-stamped and clean. Jared's flagged every major offense. Forgery, laundering, bribery, racketeering. And the gala servers? Thorne asked. Still clean. We can leak the footage the night of the vote. Make it live. Make it public. Thorne looked at them all. This isn't just about Rena and Brock anymore. This is about every name on that list who saw a soldier as a loophole. Derek smirked. Operation Ghost, huh? Thorne nodded once. Let's haunt the bastards. Judge Thornwell wasn't the kind of man you approached in daylight. Too many eyes. So Thorne waited until after dark. He found the judge where he always went Thursday nights, at a private poker game in the back room of Baxter's Steakhouse. Same table every week. Same cigar. Same arrogance. Thorne entered through the rear kitchen, flashed a fake catering badge, and slipped into the shadows near the card table. He waited until the game broke for drinks, then followed Thornwell into the hallway near the restrooms. Judge. Thornwell turned, just enough time for recognition to hit him like a fist. You, he stammered. You're alive, Thorne finished. And watching. Thornwell backed up. You have no idea what you're doing. These people, Halden, Rourke, they're too deep. You can't stop this. You already did, Thorne said. He pressed play on his phone. Rena's voice. Push it through. He's dead. There's no one left to object. Then Brock. He was a useful corpse. Nothing more. The judge's face turned gray. I'll be disbarred, he whispered. Worse. You'll be in prison, Thorne corrected. Unless you give me everything. Every document. Every false filing. Tonight. Thornwell hesitated. I have nothing. Don't lie. Thorne snapped. You've got safes. Passwords. You kept copies because people like you never go down with the ship. They go quietly. Greasy and safe. But I'm not giving you that luxury. Thornwell stared at him, breathing hard. Thorne lowered his voice. You bought my death for land. I want your guilt. And if you don't hand it over, I will take it from you in court, in front of cameras, and you'll become the face of every corrupt backroom deal this county ever made. The judge's hand trembled. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a USB drive. It's all there. Thorne took it, and didn't say a word as he walked away. Brock Halden poured himself a top-shelf scotch as the city lights flickered across the skyline outside his penthouse office. Victory tasted good. He had the council vote in his pocket. Rena was already planning the next groundbreaking ceremony. Colonel Rourke had secured 3 more expedited land claims. Their next project, Valor was greenlit. Life was perfect. Then came the text. Unknown number. I'm watching you, Brock. How's it feel to build your empire on dead men? Brock froze, the glass in his hand shaking slightly. He scanned the office, turned to the hallway. Nothing. He texted back. Who is this? No reply. A minute later, a second message came in. A photo. Grainy. But it showed him and Rena, mid-conversation in the gala's back lounge, where she'd said, if he ever comes back, we'll destroy him again. He dropped the phone. Across town, Thorne watched the reaction from a tapped security feed. Got him twitching, Derek said, grinning. Thorne didn't smile. He needs to feel safe. Just rattled enough to double down. Lane leaned over the laptop. And Rena. She's hosting the city council fundraiser tomorrow night, Thorne said. We bait her into flaunting everything. Let her brag. We recorded. One last nail. He looked at Jared. You ready to go back in? Jared hesitated. You sure they won't suspect me? They think they already won, Thorne said. That's what makes them sloppy. Jared nodded. Let's dance with the devil then. Thorne's voice was low. Just don't forget who's leading him to hell. Lane had been digging through the archives when she found it. A letter. Not digital, handwritten, mailed from an overseas base. Addressed to Rena. Postmarked just 3 weeks before Thorne's last mission. It wasn't from Brock. It was from Colonel Rourke. And it wasn't military-related. It was personal. Rena, you said once that if you didn't come back, we could finally be free. I think about that night more than I should. He'll be gone soon. Be ready. M. Lane dropped the letter like it burned. She double-checked the handwriting. It matched a holiday card Thorne had once received from Rourke's assistant. She called Thorne immediately. He arrived at the unit within 20 minutes. Lane handed him the envelope. She didn't just lie to you. She lied to everyone. Thorne read the letter in silence. I trusted him, he said. Followed him into fire. Lane sat down. You think he planned it all with her? I think he gave the order to leave me behind. Because of her? Thorne's face hardened. Because of both of them. Derek stepped in. What now? Thorne stared at the wall of names, photos, strings of red thread connecting the whole operation. This changes everything. How? Lane asked. He turned to her. We make the colonel the centerpiece. Not just corruption conspiracy. Abuse of military power. Fraud. Affair. We tie into Brock and Rena. Then we cut the head off the snake. Lane nodded. You sure we're ready? Thorne looked her dead in the eye. Ready's not the question anymore. The question is, are they? The council fundraiser was all glitter and grins. Crystal glasses clinked. Laughter echoed. Cameras flashed across the chandelier-lit ballroom. Local news outlets buzzed around like bees chasing honey-coated quotes. Rena Mercer stood in the center, glowing in her designer gown, sipping champagne like she'd already won the next 10 years. Lane stepped through the crowd, dressed sleek, face calm. She spotted Brock schmoozing the mayor, Rourke lurking near the bar, Judge Thornwell standing stiff near a stage podium like he wanted to vanish. Got eyes on them all, she whispered into her mic. Derek's voice crackled softly in her ear. Cameras rolling. Audio clean. Lane approached her mother slowly, her smile forced. Mom. Rena turned, surprised. Well, you do remember family. Lane kept the act. Just wanted to see what success looked like. Rena sipped her drink. Feels good, baby. Everything I ever wanted. All in reach. Lane leaned closer. You ever think about Dad? Rena tilted her head. He's gone, sweetheart. We survived. Lane's voice softened. Just enough. But what if he wasn't? Rena's smile wavered. What's that supposed to mean? Lane took out her phone, pretended to show a photo, but the screen stayed black, recording audio. I mean, would you still say he's unstable? If he came back? Rena froze. What are you getting at? Lane whispered, just loud enough for the mic to catch. You always were good at burying people. But the past? It's harder to kill. Rena's eyes darted, suddenly unsure. Lane slipped the phone back in her purse and walked away. Outside, in a parked SUV, Thorne listened to every word. She gave us what we needed, Derek said. Thorne stared at the ballroom entrance. Now we give them what they deserve. The council vote was less than 24 hours away. If passed, 5 new development zones would be approved, including veteran-owned land illegally seized through forged paperwork. Thorne had no intention of letting that vote happen quietly. Back in the warehouse, he gathered his crew. Tonight, he said, we corner every one of them. Politicians. Judges. The colonel. We get them on camera talking. Admitting. Even better? Gloating. Derek spread out a map of the gala venue. They'll all be there again. Final fundraising push before tomorrow's vote. Perfect, Thorne said. We hit them where they feel safest. Lane patched in the camera feeds. Jared double-checked the bugging devices. Thorne loaded the presentation file, an entire dossier, time-stamped, cross-referenced, and packaged like a courtroom bullet. Then he pulled out the wild card. A USB key labeled fail-safe. What's that? Lane asked. Insurance, Thorne said. If anything happens to us tonight, this hits the media. Full release. Derek whistled. That'll bury them. That's the idea. They packed the gear in silence. Focused. Determined. Later that night, Thorne slipped into the gala, wearing a suit for the first time in years. Hair trimmed. Clean shave. A ghost in flesh. He wasn't the soldier who left. He was the reckoning that returned. Upstairs, Lane activated the feed. Every conversation recorded. Every secret picked clean. And as the guests smiled for photos, made backroom deals, and toasted a future built on stolen graves. Thorne waited. Before it all exploded, Thorne had one final thing to do. He parked outside a prison on the edge of county lines. Not a place for long-term sentences. Just holding. Rena was inside. She'd been picked up for unpaid tickets tied to one of the stolen properties, Thorne's bait. He used fake paperwork to trigger the arrest. She thought it was a mistake. She had no idea it was the beginning of the end. A guard led him into a visitation room. One-sided glass. He sat. Waited. Rena entered, face pale, dressed in gray. No makeup. No mask. When she saw him, her steps slowed. You, she whispered. Me. I don't understand. Why? Why are you doing this? He leaned forward. Because you stole my name. My land. My memory. You replaced me before the dirt cooled on my dog tags. I was scared, she said, lips trembling. I thought you were dead. You hoped I was. I moved on. I needed to. Lane needed stability. She needed a mother who didn't sell her father's grave. Rena's voice cracked. You think this is easy for me? Thorne's eyes were cold. You made it easy. You sold my life like a real estate listing. Now it's your turn to watch everything you built burn. He stood up. Goodbye, Rena. She grabbed the glass. You won't get away with this. He smiled for the first time in weeks. A small, sharp thing. I already did. The city council chamber was packed. Reporters, developers, families. Cameras pointed in every direction. A line of council members sat stiffly under banners promoting growth for the next generation. Thorne stood at the back, silent, as the meeting opened. The room buzzed with anticipation. Councilman Griggs smiled wide as he introduced the land development bill. This vote represents opportunity, unity, and forward movement. Derek, seated 3 rows back, texted, now. Lane hit the button. The chamber screens flickered, then changed. Gone were the slideshow maps. Now playing. Hidden footage. Rena and Brock laughing about Thorne's death, Colonel Rourke's voice in that damning letter. Be ready. Judge Thornwell's confession in the hallway one after another, video after video. The room fell silent. Faces turned white. Brock stood up. This is illegal. You can't. Sit down, the mayor snapped. Reporters filmed everything. Council members began to panic. One walked out. Another shouted for recess. Too late. The truth was out. Thorne stepped forward. Calm. Steady. His voice echoed in the stunned silence. My name is Thorne Mercer. U.S. Army Ranger. Declared dead. Buried by my own wife and her partners. They stole my land, my benefits, my name. He held up a folder. Every file, every deal, every forged paper is in here. And it's going to federal court. He turned to the cameras. This wasn't just betrayal. It was fraud. On our veterans. On our people. On the very ground we bled for. Brock tried to run. Police stopped him at the door. Rena was already in handcuffs. Rourke vanished through a side exit, but not fast enough. Federal agents were waiting outside. As the room erupted into chaos, Thorne stood still. The fire was lit, and everything they built was going up in flames. The city never slept, but tonight it froze. Within 2 hours of the explosive city council meeting, the video footage had gone viral. Not just on local news. National. #StolenValor trended across social media. Cable news anchors ran split screens of Thorne's statement beside mugshots of Brock Halden and Rena Mercer. The files Lane had backed up online were dumped to a secure whistleblower site. Every forged document, every backroom payment, every recorded confession, now available to the world. By midnight, 5 more council members were under investigation. At 12:42 a.m., federal agents executed a raid on Colonel Rourke's private home in Durham. They found 2 off-the-books laptops, multiple passports, and $180,000 in untraceable cash. Thorne stood outside the warehouse, staring at the skyline in silence. "Think it'll stick?" Derek asked, stepping up beside him. Thorne didn't blink. "It has to." Jared's phone buzzed. "DA Keller wants to talk. Says indictments are being prepped. She's calling it the biggest local corruption case in 20 years. Lane emerged from the back room, laptop in hand. "I got a ping from a soldiers group in Texas. They say they've seen similar land seizures. They want to help." Thorne turned, meeting her eyes. "This wasn't just about me anymore." "No," Lane said. "It's about all of you they tried to bury." He looked up at the stars. Tonight, they weren't just dots in the sky. They were eyes watching justice rise. And it wasn't done yet. The arraignment hearing was open to the public. People lined up around the courthouse block. Veterans in uniform. Families holding signs. News vans fighting for parking spots. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick, part anger, part disbelief. Brock Halden sat at the defense table, hands cuffed, face pale. Rena was beside him, makeup smeared, hair pulled back tight like she still thought appearances mattered. Judge Keller entered, slammed the gavel once. Court is now in session. The charges read like a war report: grand larceny, wire fraud, land theft, conspiracy to defraud the U.S. Government forgery, obstruction of justice, each one hit like a hammer. Brock tried to speak. "Your Honor, this is all quiet," Keller barked. Rena's lawyer whispered, trying to salvage something, anything. On the prosecution bench, DA Keller stood confidently, surrounded by boxes of evidence and 2 FBI agents. She turned, made eye contact with Thorne seated quietly in the second row. She gave a nod. He gave nothing back. The best moment came when a projector lit up the courtroom wall. Rena's voice: "If he ever crawls back, we'll make sure no one believes a word he says." Gasps echoed across the room. Then the judge spoke. "Due to the overwhelming evidence, the defendants are denied bail. They will remain in custody until trial." Rena's mouth fell open. This wasn't supposed to happen. Brock turned to her. "You said this would be clean. You said we were safe. You said I was your insurance," she hissed. Thorne watched them unravel, and finally smiled. The wave spread fast. Within 48 hours, 4 more arrests followed. Judge Thornwell, caught at his lake house trying to burn documents. Councilman Griggs handcuffed during a live interview. A former VA liaison caught funneling fake widow benefits to fake charities. And most shockingly, Colonel Rourke booked into federal custody with no press allowed. Thorne didn't attend every arrest. He didn't need to. He sat in the warehouse, watching it unfold on screens. "You really did it," Derek said. Thorne shook his head. "We did." Lane came in, phone in hand. "People are reaching out. Families, soldiers, reporters. They want your story." Thorne looked at her. "They have it." "No, I mean you. They want to hear it from you. Not just the files. The face. The voice." He leaned back in his chair. "I'm not a hero." "No," Lane said, stepping closer. "You're a survivor. And you just reminded a lot of people that the system doesn't get to decide when a soldier's story ends." He didn't respond right away. Then, "Set it up. But not press. Veterans Network. Give it to people who've been through the same dirt." She nodded. Jared came in. They just froze all of Brock's accounts. Rena's too. She's got nothing. Thorne looked around. The Empire was ashes. The masks were off. And the reckoning had been delivered. Not with violence, but with truth. I hope you've all subscribed by now. Your support means the world. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know that from where you are listening to my stories. I'm excited to hear your feedback and engage with you all. Keep the positivity coming. The courtroom felt like a coliseum. 3 rows deep with press. Veterans lined the walls. Protesters outside holding signs that read, "Our names are not for sale. Justice for the silenced." Rena sat behind her defense table like a shattered porcelain doll. Makeup couldn't fix the sleepless nights. Hair fell limp. She no longer carried the steel confidence of a woman who thought she was untouchable. Brock Halden looked worse. 10 pounds lighter, eyes bloodshot, fingers twitching like he was still trying to sign checks that no longer held value. The jury watched silently. DA Maureen Keller stood before them, laser-focused. "This case is not about business," she said. "It's about betrayal. It's about using the broken trust of our veterans to build fortunes. This is about Thorne Mercer, a soldier who was declared dead not by war, but by the people he trusted." Thorne sat in the front row, suit pressed, hands calm in his lap. The prosecution brought it all. Emails, recordings, paper trails, witnesses. One by one, soldiers took the stand. Leo Mendez, a widow who'd been lied to about her husband's benefits. A whistleblower from the zoning board who admitted she was paid to lose records. Then came the footage. The room tensed as Rena's voice played for all to hear. "He's dead. We can finally build the life we wanted." Rena dropped her eyes. The jury watched every second. Later, Brock snapped under cross-examination, shouting, "Everyone knew what we were doing. It was business." "Wrong move." Keller turned to the jury. "You don't bury a man for business." On day 5 of the trial, the defense tried a new tactic. Rena's lawyer spun the narrative. She was manipulated, emotionally abandoned, left behind by a system that failed her. She forged a death certificate, Keller replied. That wasn't grief. That was greed. Rena finally took the stand. She looked out at the jury, eyes glassy. Thorne was gone. We were told there was no hope. I just wanted to start over. Did starting over require stealing his land? Keller asked. Rena flinched. His bank accounts? His daughter? Silence. Did it require working with the man your husband hated most? Rena looked at Thorne for the first time. He didn't blink. I didn't plan all of it, she whispered. But you enjoyed it, Keller said. Until he came back. Rena didn't answer. The colonel's trial was moved to federal court, but his name came up often. Documents tied Rourke directly to the land grabs, the manipulation of military status records, and dozens of fake signatures. The whole system had cracks. And Thorne was the crowbar. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed. Mr. Mercer, any comment? Thorne gave one line. Burying a man doesn't make him silent. Inside, the wall shook under the weight of exposed lies. Brock broke first, offered a full confession in exchange for reduced time. Too late. The plea deal was denied. Judge Keller, ruling from the bench, was clear. This case isn't just about individuals. It's about a pattern of exploitation. One that stops now. The sentencing day arrived like a storm. Rena wore the same beige blouse she once wore to Thorne's memorial. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Brock stood still, jaw tight, as the judge read out the penalties. Brock Halden, 22 years for conspiracy, fraud, racketeering, and obstruction. Rena Mercer, 17 years for forgery, financial theft, and conspiracy to defraud. Judge Thornwell, 12 years with no parole. Colonel Rourke, awaiting federal trial, likely to face 25+ years. As the judge closed the file, she spoke to the room. This is not just a victory for one man. This is justice for every veteran used as a stepping stone, for every name erased for profit. She turned to Thorne, and for the soldier who refused to stay buried. Outside, reporters swarmed. But Thorne didn't speak. He just walked. Past cameras. Past questions. Past noise. Lane caught up to him at the car. It's over, she said. He looked at her. No, it's just beginning. She smiled. So what now? Thorne stared ahead. Now we rebuild. And for the first time since his boots touched American soil again, Thorne Mercer didn't feel like a ghost. He felt alive. The courthouse was quieter now. No press. No shouting. Just dust in the air and the echo of what had been done. Thorne stood by the side doors with a manila envelope tucked under his arm. Inside were documents he never thought he'd carry again, his military discharge form, now corrected. The status box no longer read presumed Kia. It read returned, verified alive. Leo Mendez met him outside, leaning on his cane, a grin on his face. Told you. Karma never misses. Thorne handed him a second envelope. Your pension paperwork. Unfrozen. Full back pay. Leo stared at it. You serious? Signed yesterday. Leo let out a breath that sounded like relief and rage tangled into one. Feels weird, doesn't it? Leo asked. Winning. It's not a win, Thorne said. It's a correction. Across the state, more veterans were coming forward. Thorne's case cracked open a wider investigation, property seizures, fraudulent benefit cuts, illegal guardianship arrangements. The same pattern, duplicated in different counties. D.A. Keller built a task force. Thorne wasn't just a symbol anymore. He was part of the fix. He didn't want applause. He wanted cleanup. He joined quietly, helping identify other forged cases, testifying anonymously, meeting families who thought they'd lost everything. Lane helped organize records. Derek started building a small legal support team for affected vets. And in the middle of it all, Thorne worked in silence. Redemption wasn't loud. It was consistent. And now, it was happening. The prison smelled like bleach and concrete. They made Thorne wait 15 minutes. Enough time for second thoughts. But he didn't leave. When the guard finally opened the door, Rena was already seated behind the glass, in her beige jumpsuit, thin as a shadow. She didn't speak first. He sat, picked up the phone. She hesitated, then lifted hers. Why are you here? She asked, voice low. Thorne looked at her, not with rage, not with pity, just truth. I wanted to see what nothing looked like. She flinched. You're not here for revenge, she said. No, he said. That part's over. Rena studied him. You were supposed to stay gone. I know. She looked down. Brock, he lied too. I thought it was love. I thought we'd get away with it. But it turned on us. No, Thorne said, calm. You turned on yourself. Rena's eyes glossed. I lost everything. Thorne leaned forward. No, you threw it away. There's a difference. She opened her mouth, but closed it again. He stood. No threats. No anger. Just this. He leaned closer to the glass. You died the day you buried me, and I lived the day I left you behind. Rena said nothing as he walked away. No goodbye. No closure. Because closure wasn't something she earned. The construction signs were gone. The bulldozers, trailers, and fencing had been stripped from the land like rust peeled from metal. What remained were the bones of something real, a house foundation, an old oak still standing, and earth that finally belonged to the man who bled for it. Thorne stood on his family's land, hands in his pockets, when tugging at the hem of his jacket. He could still hear his father's voice in the trees. Could still picture his mother planting dogwoods along the driveway. And now, it was his again. Lane stepped out of the truck with a handmade sign in her hands. What do you think? She asked. It read, Mercer Ground. No trespassing. He took it, ran his hand over the carved letters. You made this. Wood from the old porch. Thought we should use it. He knelt and hammered it into the ground himself. No ceremony. Just purpose. Looks right, he said. They walked the land together, tracing the outlines of what once was and what would come again. No condos. No corruption. Just rebuilding. He'd start with a small cabin. Solar power. Rainwater collection. Maybe even some livestock. Quiet life. Honest work. Lane pointed toward the back acres. You know. I've been thinking. We could start a center. A what? For vets. Somewhere quiet. Off-grid. A reset. You've got the land. Thorne smiled for the first time in days. That's not a bad idea. Maybe justice wasn't just about punishment. Maybe it was about planting something new on the graves of betrayal. News of Colonel Rourke's trial barely made headlines. But Thorne followed every minute. The man never showed remorse. Claimed he was serving a greater purpose. Called it collateral business. But his own men testified against him. Emails. Orders. Secret payouts. The hidden relationship with Rena. It all spilled out like bile. He was sentenced to 27 years without parole. Disgraced. Stripped of rank. Stripped of name. But the real punishment? The silence. No honor guard. No retirement. No ceremony. Just a number on a cell door. Thorne didn't attend the sentencing. He didn't need to. Instead, he sat by the pond on his land, laying beside him, the sunset bleeding through the trees. "You feel done?" she asked. He thought for a long time. Not done. Just steady. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't flinch this time. The world kept spinning. Crooked people still existed. But now, fewer of them wore badges. Fewer signed fake deeds. And for once, the ground beneath him wasn't shifting. It was solid. It was his. The military building felt like another lifetime. Thorne walked its sterile halls quietly, flanked by 2 younger officers. He didn't wear a uniform. He didn't need one anymore. Inside the room, 3 men waited, 2 from the Department of Defense, 1 from the VA, formal suits. Paperwork stacked on the table. A flag folded on the side like a question mark. "Mr. Mercer," one said, standing. "We've reviewed your case. The reports, the forged filings, the internal cover-up. It never should have happened." Thorne nodded once. No anger in his face. Just expectation. The official slid a file across the table. "Your status has been officially amended. You were never Kia. Your records are corrected in every database, including federal and military systems." Thorne opened the folder. There it was, his name, clean and correct. "Your medals are reinstated. Benefits restored. You'll receive full back pay, with added reparations for the error." One of them paused. "Would you like a ceremony?" "We could." "No," Thorne said calmly. "I didn't come for applause." The men exchanged glances, then nodded. He signed where they told him, left the building quietly. As he stepped out into the sunlight, Lane waited by the truck. "How'd it go?" she asked. He handed her the folder. They gave it all back. She opened it slowly. Her voice caught. "You're whole again." "No," he said, stepping into the driver's seat. "I'm finally real again." The wind on the land was softer now. No construction trucks. No sirens. Just the breeze through the trees, birds circling above, and the sound of hammer to wood. Thorne was rebuilding by hand, one board at a time. The new cabin rose from the same footprint where his childhood home once stood. Not fancy, just strong. He built shelters in worse conditions. But this one? It was for living. Lane helped, hammering nails, painting signs, cutting insulation. They worked in rhythm. No noise. No tension. Just peace. Derek stopped by with 2 iced teas. "How long you been out here today?" "Since sunup," Thorne said, taking the drink. "Place looks good. It'll feel better when it's done." Derek leaned on the porch post. "You ever think about leaving town?" "Not once." "You could disappear. Start fresh." "I already did," Thorne said. "Right here." Derek looked around. "You know, what you pulled off. Most people don't come back from betrayal like that." Thorne didn't respond immediately. Then he said, "It wasn't about coming back. It was about taking back." Derek nodded. "Hell of a thing." Later, as night crept in and the stars blinked awake, Thorne sat outside on the half-finished porch, watching the horizon. He wasn't waiting for something to happen anymore. He was just being. No war. No ghosts. Just peace. And for the first time in years, he let himself sleep without a gun under his bed. It came in the mail like any other envelope. No fancy stamp. No official seal. Just her name in the corner, Lane Mercer. Thorne found it on the porch and sat down to read. "Dad, I wrote this for a scholarship essay. I don't know if I'll win, but I needed to say it anyway. People always talk about soldiers like they're just warriors. But I've seen something else. I've seen what happens when a man loses everything, not on the battlefield, but at home. I've seen how betrayal can break a heart more than any bullet. And I've seen what strength really looks like. It's not just standing tall. It's staying silent when you could scream. It's gathering the truth when you're surrounded by lies. It's watching the people who buried you get away with it, then taking it all back without becoming them. That's what you did. You didn't just survive, Dad. You changed the ending. For me, for other veterans, for yourself. I want people to remember that revenge didn't define you. Justice did. And that's the man I'll always be proud to call my father. Lane Thorne stared at the page, the ink smudging slightly under his fingers. Then he folded it gently and tucked it into the back pocket of his jeans. Not everything needed to be displayed. Some things were just meant to be carried. 2 months later, a small crowd gathered near the tree line at the edge of Mercer Ground. No press. No cameras. Just a few folding chairs, a banner that read, Mercer Renewal Center, healing ground for veterans. It wasn't big. Not yet. Just a cabin, a trail, a garden, and space. But for the men and women walking its paths, those who carried invisible wounds, it was more than enough. Thorne stood at the front, flanked by Lane and Derek. This land was stolen once, he said quietly. Not just from me, but from every person who wore a uniform and trusted the system to protect what they gave their lives for. He looked around the circle. But we took it back. Not with bullets. With truth. With patience. With proof. Applause didn't erupt. It rose. Gentle. Earned. Later, Thorne walked the grounds, watching a young vet sit under the same oak tree his father planted decades ago. Another chopped wood with Derek, smiling for the first time in weeks. Lane gave a quiet tour to 2 reporters from a veteran's mental health magazine. He didn't need recognition. This was the legacy. Not revenge, but restoration. That night, Thorne sat alone on the porch, a pen in his hand, a single page in front of him. No email. No typed memo. Just real ink. Real paper. To whoever reads this next, you might be where I was. Buried under lies. Left behind. Angry at a world that doesn't seem to care what it cost you. Don't stay there. Don't let betrayal become your identity. Don't become them to beat them. Beat them without becoming what they feared you'd become. Tell the truth. Build again. Plant something new where they tried to salt the earth. And above all, keep your name. The system may fail, but you don't have to. Thorne Mercer, he folded it, placed it in a metal box, and buried it under the old oak tree. One day, someone else might dig it up. Someone who needed it. And that would be enough. Sunlight broke across Mercer Ground. Lane brewed coffee inside the finished cabin. She stepped out onto the porch and found her father already up, boots laced, jacket on. Where you headed? She asked. Back trail, he said. That creek needs clearing. Want company? He paused, then smiled. Always. As they walked through the morning fog, the land felt new. Not like it had forgotten what happened, but like it had forgiven. Peace, at last, had taken root. But before we leave, let me ask you something. What would you have done in Thorne's place? Let us know in the comments. I want to hear your take, your truth. And if you've been with us through this entire journey, first, thank you. Second, do something for me. Hit that like button if you felt this story. Subscribe if you want more stories that hit different, bold, human, and unforgettable. And share this with someone who needs to hear. You can come back. Stronger. This was Army Ranger's final mission. Wife's betrayal uncovered. Daughter helps seek justice. And we'll meet again. Same fire. New story. Next time. Take care of yourselves. And never let your name be taken from you. We'll see you in the next thriller story.